Okay, time to start working on that Siege of the Crystal Empire review. Let me just find my notepad and... The hell? That's weird. My life-size Applejack plushie shouldn't be here for another couple days. Did I order Express by mistake? Damn it. Could've used that extra 10 bits. What the hell?
Hello! I have just successfully invaded your channel. I am the great infiltrator. Solid Snake has nothing on me.
Who are you?
Huh. How dare you not recognize my lightish red feathers? I'm the Riffin Griffin, the bird with the beak. All the bronies fear me as...
Oh, Silverquill. You look a little different since I last saw you. Gotta say though, not really digging the new look. Red doesn't really suit you, bro.
Do I look like I have a horse butt?
Do I have to answer that? Look, what do you want? I'm trying to get my review for Siege of the Crystal Empire done, and I'm late enough as it is. Folks are already getting antsy. When are you reviewing Siege of the... I'll get to it when I get to it.
Oh, well, for the sake of my name, I'll join you on this review.
Why?
It's either I help you review this, or I start raiding your fridge.
Look, popcorn chicken, I don't take too kindly to ultimatums. Although this is the first 4-part arc that I've reviewed, so I suppose having a bit of help wouldn't be all that bad. Fine, you're on. Cue the title card. What is up, guys? Sketchy here with... What's your name again?
I'm MangaKamen.
With my special guest, Mortal Kombat.
I will go all scorpion on you. Don't make me get you over here.
With how good I am with Melina, I don't think you want me to. Anyway, from September to December of 2015, the main series of the MLP IDW comics featured Siege of the Crystal Empire, a 4-part story arc written by Jeremy Whitley with art by Andy Price.
This story is actually a continuation of what we learned in the Sombra issue of Friendship is Magic, where in that one we learned of the origins of the Blank Flank Sombra. Seriously, even when he succeeded in the season finale, he still didn't have anything on those legs.
I don't know about you, MangaKamen, but I was really looking forward to this one. I was pleasantly surprised by how great Fiendship number 1 was. Plus, this was the first 4-parter since Reflections, which is my favorite arc of the series. With the MLP comics falling into a bit of a slump in 2015, at least with the main series, I was hoping that Siege of the Crystal Empire would be the arc that got the series back on the right track, especially with such a great comic as its foundation.
Although I do have a few issues with the MLP comics as of late. I too was taken by surprise with the Fiendship number 1, and was even more delighted to learn that we actually got some closure on not only one of the more intimidating villains of the franchise, but also for the story of Sombra as well.
What we got though? Let's just say that it left a lot to be desired.
Indeed, although you do have to admit, it's good to see quite a few familiar faces appear in the comics.
Seeing them appear? Yes. Seeing what they do? Not really. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. What is this arc even about?
Revenge! Kinda.
I suppose it'd be best to start at the beginning. Part 1 opens up with a mysterious hooded figure contacting various side antagonists throughout the TV show's run, and Iron Will. We then cut to the Crystal Empire where the main 6 are helping set up the Crystal Fair.
As one would imagine after reading the opening scenes, the antagonists, and Iron Will, show up there. Some of the main 6 are suspicious of the guys who are causing trouble or all suddenly showing up at the same place, but I'm sure there's nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Flim Flam brothers. They seem to have turned over a new leaf. They've abandoned their con-stallion ways and have committed themselves to being honest business ponies, and they're opening a quaint little booth at the Crystal Fair. Oh my god, changelings.
Fly, my pretties, fly! But in all seriousness, that device must be bigger on the inside than the outside to have all those changelings in there.
It probably operates on Scott Pilgrim subspace logic. Anyway, with a changeling swarm now loose in the Empire, Queen Chrysalis shows up, revealing herself as the last member that this mysterious hooded figure recruited. But in all honesty, if she had those numbers, she's really the only one needed for this operation. I mean, she could have just had a couple changelings shapeshift and distract the main 6 themselves. I guess they probably needed the Flim Flam Brothers booth to hide in, but couldn't they just hide amongst the crowd in disguise? There really wasn't a need for the others to get involved, especially not Iron Will. I was skeptical about this guy's involvement in this arc from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, he's wearing pants. That's a telltale sign of something's up.
First off, Iron Will was never a bad guy, so he already doesn't fit in with the others in this ragtag group. Plus, in Friends Forever number 10, we learned that he had a wife and son, and that he wanted to be a good role model for him to look up to. I'm sorry, but what about any of this screams good role model?
Indeed! Wanting to get revenge doesn't fall in line with what we've read about Iron Will. But then again, the comics have been known to put characters in out-of-character themes or even designs. Ugh. It was almost as if the writers were just trying to find a fifth ranger for this group, not counting the Dark Army of the Changelings, of course. And since Iron Will was a character that completely stood on both show and comics, that he would be just as good for this. After all, Iron Will has a good voice in the show, and it is completely unique since looking at just the show, we haven't seen any other Minotaur since Iron Will.
Still, I have to wonder if including him at all was even worth it, especially in a group that, again, didn't even need to be part of this story, save for Chrysalis. But we can get to the uselessness of this B team later on, since this isn't the last we see of them. So, after a brief fight scene, the hooded pony enters the Crystal Castle under all the commotion and opens the door to Sombra's secret chambers.
All the while, Armor's hooves seem to keep disappearing. But we finally learn another character in the hood is Hope.
Yeah, if you read the comic that led up to this arc, finding out that Radiant Hope was behind all this isn't that surprising. So, once inside, Hope calls out for Sombra. Naturally, the ex-king is a little salty about Hope calling him a monster and abandoning him when they were younger, but Hope insists that she wants to make things right with her old friend, and does so by using her magic to restore Sombra's physical form. And so ends part 1.
And hot damn, look at Sombra! I like Price's art style, and this showcases why. He can put a lot of detail into a rather simplified original design and make Sombra look more intimidating than he was in Puff and Smoke. Even then, the imagery before this shows Sombra as purple smoke clouds that just convey a sense of threat.
I'm totally with you on that. From the beginning, Price has been my favorite artist on the MLP IDW team. His style makes the characters look a lot more organic, and he takes advantage of the fact that the comics aren't limited by the show's flash puppets, resulting in some amazing facial expressions, especially with Queen Chrysalis. It's like the music in the Sonic games. Even if the game sucks, the music's still good. Although, I'm sure there's one question burning in the minds of the folks that haven't read Fiendship number 1. Who the hell is Radiant Hope?
Well, let's roll around at the speed of sound. We got places to go and follow the rainbow to the next issue, where we're actually given a brief recap of Fiendship number 1, where we see the origins of Sombra and Hope and how he thought his destiny was written in stone, so he turned the current princess of the Crystal Empire into rock and blasted her into pieces. And thus, he walks the dark side now.
This little recap was a good way to keep the arc from alienating people that didn't read Fiendship number 1, while also providing a new perspective for the people that did read the comic by telling Hope's side of the story, showing us what happened to her after Sombra was first defeated, and explaining how she was able to survive for 1,000 years. Plus, the recap is short and sweet, and it doesn't go on longer than it needs to.
We also get to see the Umbrum in this section. Yeah, well, not what I was expecting, to be honest. They do happen to have the smoky-like bodies, but frankly, these designs are just plain ugly. And they're trying to put on the whole facade for this. Granted, I'll admit the designs do what they're supposed to do, convey otherworldly feel to the readers, but there's just something that rubs me the wrong way. I don't know, it could be the weird lines or how the smoke is coming from their eyes. I just can't put my talent on it. Your thoughts?
Honestly, I didn't mind the Umbrum's designs. They're cute and seemingly harmless, and I'm not really bothered by their looks. What does bother me is the rest of part 2. With Sombra fully resurrected, he rushes out into the city to find and destroy the princess. Cadence catches a glimpse of him and realizes the gravity of the situation. So what does she do?
She takes a stand and protects her subjects from the impending threat?
I wish. But nope, she goes to alert Celestia and Luna. I would have preferred to see Cadence defend her own empire and step up to the plate as princess, but I'll give that a pass for now. I cannot grant the same courtesy to the next chunk of the comic though. What ensues after this is essentially a repeat of the fight from part 1. The only noteworthy developments the story makes is that the main 6 get locked up and Celestia and Luna arrive on the scene, only to be petrified by Sombra's magic. Okay, so that overdrawn and rehashed fight scene accomplished what exactly?
To prove the princesses can be stoned?
420 is still a couple days away in Mario Kart. Slow down. Anyway, in most 4-part arcs, each part does something to progress the story, but part 2 of Siege barely does that. Hell, if you've already read Fiendship number 1, you can skip everything except the 2 pages that explain how Hope survived and the last 4 or 5 pages, and you wouldn't have missed anything important.
Well, other than the more character assassination of Iron Will.
Again, nothing of value will be lost.
So, skipping to the next issue?
Well, there's nothing else worth mentioning here, so why the hell not?
Let's do the comic skip! Again!
Okay, so where were we? Oh yeah, Tia and Lulu getting stoned. Now, despite Hope's initial reaction to the petrified princesses, the beginning of part 3 shows that she's not bothered by it actually. She and Sombra then discuss their end goal of setting the Umbrum free. Chrysalis overhears this and suddenly objects to... Wait, they're actually making use of Chrysalis's presence in this story? What?
Well, considering she's Griffinstone knows how old, it would make sense that Chrysalis would have a lot of experience with not only Equestria, but also creatures that could potentially threaten her people. We saw this back in her Fiendship comic. She learned how to deal with dragons and create her own Trojan horse. In the comics, she's shown to be smart. She just has a bit of an ego to her.
And that's why she's best villain. So, Chrissy's beef with Sombra's goal is that she thought that all they planned to do was overthrow the princesses, and in return for her assistance, the changelings would be free to feed across Equestria. But the sudden knowledge of the Umbrum being set free makes her change her tune.
Well, with the history lesson we get from her about the Umbrum, it's not too much of a stretch to see why she's willing to change her tune. After all, from what we learned, the Umbrum would threaten not only their food supply, but also be a threat to the changelings.
No kidding. So, after finding out what Sombra plans to do, Chrissy decides to pack up her crew and bounce, but not before throwing Twilight on the ground. As for the rest of the B antagonists, and Iron Will, they just go away. Yup, turns out their roles could have been served by random changelings instead of them after all. Their specific involvement held no weight whatsoever. That's nice to know. So what's next?
Cadence gets mad! And wouldn't you even like her when she's... Oh, well... That's disappointing.
Hold on there, Milk and Cookies. This might actually be one of the more interesting scenes in this part, and even the entire arc. First of all, we got Cadence actually doing something, finally. And then we learn an interesting little tidbit about dark magic. Remember when Twilight used it in the show?
Yeah, and it gave her a headache.
Did you notice how Cadence felt just fine when she used dark magic?
Uh-huh.
Well, we learned from Radiant Hope that it takes true rage to fully harness dark magic. If you have just plain old anger, the spell will work, but your head won't feel too well. But with rage, it's no problem.
Shame that this is just in the comics, not in the show, cause no one will accept this as canon.
Don't remind me. While the comics don't always put out the best material, as we've seen so far, there are plenty of stories that provide some neat material. Things are starting to look up for this arc. We have some foreshadowing of hidden rage within the Princess of Love, and she's finally confronting her opponent head-on by having Hope take her to see the Umbrum for herself. Good initiative there.
100 bits that it blows up in their faces.
Well, things seem to go well, but before they go any further, the story cuts back to the main 6 again.
You know what I don't get? Both Rarity and Armor don't have those black rocks on their horns like Twilight, and the changelings are gone. Why did they just use their magic to get out? Was it just to shoehorn the Twilight I believe in you stuff?
Can we just pretend that a less flank pullish resolution happened and get back to the more interesting story going on?
Sure, what's the worst that could happen?
Well, for one, we get a scene that truly raises the stakes. Cadence reveals that the Umbrum weren't what Hope thought they were, finally pulling the wool from over the poor unicorn's eyes. We then get the full story of how Sombra was found by the Crystal Ponies as a cult. The Umbrum forcibly repressed the darkness in Sombra so that they could use him to infiltrate the ponies, where he lived with them until the repressed darkness grew back to its full strength.
Now these here are nightmare fuel. The smoky theme works a lot better with the bigger, more intimidating look. Heck, the escape scene page is amazing, and the contrast between the ponies and the Umbrum really evokes a dark and foreboding feel for what's to come.
Not to mention that this really brings on the tension that the arc had been missing up till this point. Cadence and Hope make their escape and rush to stop Sombra, who, with his hazy memory, is still doubtful about whether the Umbrum are good like Hope originally claimed. Hope sees this chance to save Sombra and is about to tell him the truth.
And then Twilight happens. That's really a counter gag for how many times Twilight's screw-ups have put Avalers in danger.
It really would help us keep track, wouldn't it? Hope taking a shot for Sombra was what pushed him over the edge, prompting him to release the Umbrum. You know, aside from that Believe Ex Machina and the side antagonists falling into official irrelevance, Part 3 was pretty good. They raised the stakes and finally get the Princess of the Empire being attacked involved in the story. Granted, this should have happened much earlier, but better late than never, right?
Indeed, it just took 3 issues to get to this point.
It can only go up from here though. On to Part 4. We see Twaya and Cadence in chains, being led to Sombra's new throne. They won't be there for long though, cause Cadence is gonna use that rage in her heart to harness some good old dark magic and break out. Wait, she doesn't do that? Twilight just buys them time before their petrification? Okay.
True, but armor does get stoned in their place.
What follows is a somewhat tense conversation between Hope and Sombra. Ignoring the fact that Hope was cool with everything she and Sombra had done up until this point, she expresses her disappointment in Sombra for accepting the idea that he could never be more than a monster, saying that because her destiny of becoming a princess never came true, Sombra always had and still has the chance to avoid the destiny that he was given.
Afterwards, the Umbrums suddenly come under fire, and thus the final battle begins!
Yes, I knew Chrysalis and the Changelings would come back. It's so awesome to get to see a temporary truce to take down a common foe, the reluctant allies combining their forces to... Wait, what the hell is this?
This, my buggy friend, is the epic final battle being watered down and played for laughs.
What? Really? This is what we lead up to? Party cannons? Blinding fashion capes? Chucking apples? I'm all for humor, but this is a serious case of wrong place, wrong time. It totally contradicts the tone of most of the art.
Action comedy can work. Hell, just look at Jackie Chan. His fights can be comedic yet still be very serious at the same time. Still, not even the most epic of Power Ranger music can have salvaged this. Are you gonna be okay?
Yeah, I'll be fine. Let's just skip this mess. So, in the midst of the fight, Sombra takes out the Crystal Heart and Rabia, the head Umbrum, urges him to destroy it, so that there won't be anything standing in their way. But at the last second, Sombra decides to make his own destiny, and returns the heart to its rightful place. With the Crystal Heart back where it belongs, the Umbrum are all sucked back into their prison, and Sombra begins to fade away, but not before he shares a tearful goodbye with Radiant Hope. Wait, what is she doing? What is she doing?
Well, getting rid of any tragedy that this story might have had.
Oh my god. So, with the help of the 4 princesses, Radiant Hope is able to rid Sombra of his darkness, thus keeping him from being sealed away. You know, at least when Reverse Celestia and Luna were turned good at the end of Reflections, there was still a huge price that had to be paid. All of their evil energy had to go somewhere, and Reverse Sombra chose to sacrifice himself for the good of everyone else. And on top of that, the mirror was shattered so that Celestia could never visit the reflected world again. That's drama. That's an epic conclusion. That's a story. This arc just purifies Sombra without cost or consequence.
All with a happy ending. Yay. Can we take the facade off now?
I guess so. Now, am I really the only one that looked at this cheerful ending with a look of confusion on my face? Like the final fight scene, the tone of this ending contradicts the more dramatic tone of most of the arc, especially the latter half.
The thing that gets me about this comic is that there was a lot of potential in the story, and it did have a good premise. We did need some closure on Sombra as well as some information on the guy since all he did was growl in his initial appearance.
Fiendship number 1 made Sombra shoot up from my least favorite villain to my second favorite, and this arc not only had a lot of potential, but a lot of chances to make up for its initial flaws. I was more patient than most were when it came to this arc. I was willing to forgive the flimsy foundation. I was willing to forgive including B antagonists for no reason. I was willing to forgive the rehashed fight scene in part 2, and I was suspending my disbelief for Radiant Hope's obliviousness as far as I could. When part 3 came out, it was starting to look like my patience was going to pay off. Putting the Believe Ex Machina aside, part 3 had a lot of good things going for it. There was tension between Chrysalis and Sombra, Cadence was stepping up to defend her kingdom, and there was even an insinuation that she could possibly harness dark magic. But all of that led to absolutely nothing, and that, along with the squandered final battle and the slapshot purification, made part 4 the nail in the coffin for me. The thing is, even if they did something where Sombra's act of good saves him from being sucked away with the rest of the Umbrum and he'd learn to use dark magic for good while paying for his crimes, I'd be even more accepting of that. It would still drive home the point that just because Sombra is an embodiment of shadows doesn't mean that he has to be evil.
Then again, if there was one thing I could compliment about the comics, it'd be the art. Aside from the small goofs here and there, the art is good, but that's par for the course at this point.
Yeah, good art is something we've come to expect from Andy Price. If he had been doing so-so work leading up to this, then it would be more noticeable. But we're used to his work looking good.
Yeah, and if there's a good story behind it, I could even accept subpar art for a comic. But when there's good art in a story that just makes you want to tear out your feathers, yeah, I don't care how purity it is, it's still gonna get suck as a story. And that sucks because I love the concept of the Umbrum and their appearances.
Well, for me, the art does soften the blow a little bit. I mean, if this arc had a bad story and looked ugly, then Faust have mercy. Needless to say though, I didn't find Siege of the Crystal Empire to be very good. It had a lot of great ideas and introduced some really interesting concepts, but ended up doing nothing with them. It's the first 4-parter that I've ever disliked, and it was not the best way to end 2015. But at least this means that we can only look up from here. The 2016 comics that have been released so far have been decent at the very least, and March was actually pretty good, so there's that. As much as this arc disappointed me, I'm not willing to give up on the comics just yet. I've had too many good times to just ditch them because they had a bad year. If I can stick around through the low points of the show, I'm willing to do the same for the comics.
Right, so until the next time, reviewers, thanks for watching, and thanks to my special guest Sketchy for appearing on my new channel, and remember to examine your fandom.
Whoa, back up. This is my channel.
Oh? Well, I think me and the boys think differently. That box was bigger on the inside.
I've got the whole Westside Changeling squad on speed dial, Birdie, and they've got 11 herbs and spices with your name on them. This review was pretty good, and I was just starting to like you by the end of it, so why don't we just part on amicable terms? Alright, MangaKamen?
You got my name right. Okay, come on boys, let's hit the ramen shop on the way home. Ramen. Later, Changeling dude.
Later, Catbird. Maybe we'll do this again next time. You know what? How about you join me in my sign out?
Sure.
Until next time, keep it sketchy, folks.